Good evening, everybody. Thank you for once again tuning in to my live mental health and whatever's on your mind, really, live stream. So tonight I'm going to start talking about how to constructively argue in a relationship. So I deliberately, titled it that way because some people would read that and go, argue? How is arguing constructive? You should never argue in a relationship. There are actually people that believe that any negativity in a relationship, any arguing, anything related to conflict means you're in a wrong relationship. It's again, if you've caught any of these broadcasts, you know that my take on negativity is you're never going to eliminate negativity. You've got to learn to use it. You've got to learn to harness it. You've got to learn from it. So let's talk a little bit about that. So again, remember, this is not just about me speaking. This is about engaging with the viewers, whoever's watching, with lots of questions and interactions. I have a few questions that came in after the last webcast that I want to get to. But I want to talk a little bit about, again, how to constructively argue in a relationship. So let's talk about that. I don't know if anyone's got some questions about that. If you have any thoughts about conflict in a relationship, please send me a message. But one of the things, again, I've been doing this for over 20 years, work with thousands of couples, thousands of people, multiple clinical settings. Whenever I'm got anybody in conflict, one of the things I've noticed is that after the conflict erupts, people just, things settle down. What takes over is this idea that, I don't want to stir it up. I don't want to talk again about what we just argued about. Huge mistake couples make. Huge mistake for any relationship you have. The conflict, the arguing, whatever came out in the conflict needs to be reprocessed, needs to be processed without the anger. So if your strategy for minimizing conflict in your relationship is to argue and then to just brush everything under the rug, I guarantee you that's a recipe for building up more and more animosity, more and more negativity for the person you're with. Because what happens is, think of it as kids. Not nobody, but for the most part, you don't have a lot of parents, at least for my generation, and I'm 55, coming in to find out how the kids are feeling. There's not a lot of people coming to you saying, hey, how you feeling? Are you upset? Is there something on your mind? So we learn early on that we should just keep our comments to ourselves. We should just keep our feelings to ourselves. So then we carry that into our relationships where we actually then, when somebody hurts us or when something happens, we keep it to ourselves and we don't talk about it, which is exactly what we should not do. Why? Because you're building up hatred. You're building up animosity for the person you're with, especially if you tend to argue in a very destructive way, meaning that the both of you say a lot of things that hurt each other's feelings. Again, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, please ask a question. It does not have to be about this. Okay, it does not have to be about this topic. If something's on your mind, if you're struggling with something, somebody had texted me a question earlier. I'm going to read it, about struggling with some suicidal thoughts and depression. I want to get to that and give a little coaching on that. But if you have a question, it's not about conflict in a relationship, please ask me. So the processing of the arguing is critical to moving on from it. Because if you stop and think about it, if every time you have an argument with your significant other, you just argue and then you move on in a day or two like nothing's happened, what's happening with those thoughts and feelings inside of you? They're still percolating. They're still in you, kind of like, well, what the hell did that mean? You hate me, or what did that mean? All that mean things. You're going to stew on that, and you're not going to have answers for that. So you've got to then talk to the person. You've got to say, hey, we need to sit down and process this. Now, what I always recommend with couples or whatever is that you set that up as a rule so that each person knows that. So there's not this idea that, oh, is this person going to come talk to me? We need to set it up in our relationship so that when we have an argument, not if, when we have an argument, we are going to process the argument after we calm down. Once people are angry, once the fire is burning, remember, it's always easier to prevent a fire than to put out a fire. Once the fire's burning, you got to just let it burn off. You got to try to like get to neutral corners, and you've got to give each other time to calm down. But each person needs to know, hey, I'm going to attend to what we said and what we argued about. So that's step number one. Process the argument after you calm down. Step number two, try to the degree that you can, eliminate finger pointing. It's you, it's you, it's you. And we all do it. I've been married. I've been with my wife 10 years now. We've had our share of blowouts. Trust me. What makes it worse is when we don't own what we've done, when we don't point the finger back at ourselves. Men are, again, notorious for this. We don't grow up with fathers who teach us how to apologize. I shouldn't make a broad statement like that, but you know what I mean. In general, we don't. So what do? We learn to internalize our argument, our feelings, and then it comes out as anger. That's why you've heard many people say that anger is a secondary emotion. Exactly. What's the primary emotion? Pain. Men aren't good at admitting their pain. Men are not good at admitting they are wrong. Again, if you're watching this on any of the other Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, please share this. Please share this. If you've caught any of my previous webcasts, you know that we have to start talking about our mental illness. We have to start talking and dealing with the negativity in our minds, or it will literally engulf us. It will literally leave us with a feeling that there's no hope. Okay, so owning how we feel. Okay, in our previous broadcast, I think it was the night before the last, I talked about how to feel things. How do you actually feel things? A lot of people don't really know how to feel things. When you're in an argument, especially where you know you're wrong, you've got to try to own what you did. Pointing the finger at the person is a recipe for more and more arguing, because what happens is you get stuck in this kind of conflicted whirlpool where each person is not going to be empathetic to the other person because they're giving what they're getting. They're not owning. So I'm not going to own it. You're not going to own what you did. And this just befuddles me. Why can't we own when we've hurt somebody? Why do people have trouble apologizing? Owning what they did wrong. It doesn't mean you're admitting or you're agreeing with the person. Remember, empathy isn't agreeing with the person. Empathy is trying to feel for the person. Okay? So when you're in an argument, you've got to remember that you're going to calm down at some point. You're going to calm down. And what you say in anger is going to have to be healed, is going to have to be soothed. So constructively arguing means not only being aware of how you're arguing, but it means processing all of this after the fact. Because what happens when we don't empathize with each other? We're just literally in this whirlpool, like I said before, of finger pointing, and nobody's owning what they want to own. Again, learned behavior. Remember, learned conditioning will tell us what we need to do in an argument because it's what we've seen from other people. Hey, Angie, thanks for your question. I'll get to you in a second. So another issue that people don't like to own are their issues. So one of the things you can do constructively in an argument is say, oh, wow, that's me. That's my issue. That's my projection. That's my insecurity. Own that. You will be amazed how your partner, not all the time, but generally speaking, will calm down. Remember, everybody has these buttons that people are pressing. One of them could be, you could be married to or in a relationship with somebody who saw horrific, hey, Carol, thanks. Appreciate that. You could be with somebody who saw horrific family violence or spousal abuse or domestic violence or whatever it is growing up. So your arguing with them could be triggering all of that. And the person who went through that needs to let their partner know that this happened to them, that this is something that happened to them. Constructively arguing in a relationship is accepting that there's going to be negativity in your relationship. Please don't imbue me with perfection, that I never have issues, I never argue, my wife and I never get into it. It couldn't be further from the truth. We're learning how to have less and less of the conflict because we process things after we calm down, okay? And anger, okay? Anger is one of the most destructive things if it's not managed, because anger will burn everything down in the second. You'll feel all, shit, why did I say that? Oh man, I can't believe I said all of that. I can't believe that I actually just called him or her this or that. The thing about arguing, I'm going to get, hey, Arundira, thanks for your question. The thing about arguing is this. You've got to accept that you're going to argue. Most people say that, like, look at the argument, excuse me, look at the arguing as, oh my God, that means our relationship is doomed. That means that we're never going to be able to be happy again. Again, negativity is part of any relationship you have. You can't frame the negativity as like, oh, that's a sign. It's a sign. And you guys have heard me say this before about what I call mental health, social media mental health versus real mental health. Social media mental health is eliminate the negative. Get negative people out of your life. Oh, it's a red flag. Oh, it's a red flag if they're like this or that. If they have daddy issues or if they have mommy issues, it's a red flag. Run to the hills. Ridiculous. I've said this 100 times. I'll say it again. Compatibility takes work. Compatibility in a relationship takes work. Arguing is not an indicator that you're in the wrong relationship. What is really an indicator that you're in the wrong relationship when it comes to arguing is what you do with the arguing. Excuse me. If you guys don't talk about what you argued about, then it's never going to progress. So let me get to a couple questions here and then I'll circle back to this in a second. So Angie is saying, I had a couple of things. What do you think of NAMI? Okay. Some mentioned Draco to me yesterday. What do you think about that? And lastly, every time something happens and I'm upset by it, my first thought goes to suicide. It doesn't even have to be that bad, but that's the very first thought I have, and I have to stop everything else to deal with that. Where do I start with that? Great question. NAMI and Draco, these are, at least I'm assuming that the acronym means what I think it means. NAMI is a mental health organization. These are great organizations. They're doing great work. The way mental health and mental illness is starting to be assimilated into our culture is a beautiful thing, because it's about time. So what do I think about them? I think they're great. Again, assuming that this is the same NAMI and Draco that I know. So let's get to your other point, Angie, and I appreciate you being okay with sharing this. There's nothing wrong with it. Everybody has some degree of mental illness. Remember that. If you take away anything from any of these, hey Rose, how are you? Did I spell something wrong? Uh-oh. Let's see here. Well, anyway, but you're right. Constructive argument, exactly. So, but let's get back to Angie's thing about why she tends to go to suicide every time. Angie, you and I have never spoken. So again, remember, if I launch something out, please tell me if I'm wrong. But what I'm feeling from some of your comments is somewhere along the way, you learn to think in what's called all or nothing. Black or white. People always say black and white to mean black or white, but what they should be saying is black or white. because black and white is actually a very healthy way of thinking. You're allowing black and white to coexist in your brain. Most people are the other way around. Again, guys, if you're watching this, please share this. Black or white thinking is either or. So what I'm thinking, Angie, is that somewhere along the way, you learn to think in all or nothing terms, meaning that you're either all good or all bad, or you're all happy or all sad. And that is a symptom of, sort of a symptom of bipolar. Not really, because bipolar is more mania with depression, or depression with mania to a degree. But one of the things that happens with people who go immediately to suicidal, thanks, Aaron dear, I'm going to get to you in a sec, thinking, is they're thinking that all hope is lost. They're thinking that it's all bad. Like if you haven't, like I said before, if you have an argument in a relationship, then that means the person doesn't love me, or I'm a horrible person, or I almost said something I shouldn't, but they're not a good person, or she's not a good person. So one of the things, Angie, I would work with you on is you've got to try to find a middle ground between that extreme thinking, where you allow for a middle ground, which is, I can handle this thought. I can deal with this. You start with, she asked me, where do I start with that? You start with turning down how much you're hating yourself, how much you're hating how you feel. Again, I did a talk about this years ago where I explained how hating negative emotion will make the emotion worse. So Angie, if you're going to suicidal thinking very quickly, you got to slow down your thinking. This is where that mindfulness piece comes in, thinking about your thinking. You got to slow down your thinking a little, Angie, in the moment, and go, wait, whoa. Why is this really suicide worthy? And some people might hear me say that and go, well, what is suicide worthy? Look, I lived in Oregon for many years, and Oregon has assisted suicide. And I've worked with people who had various forms of chronic pain or debilitating pain. I'm not going to come into them and say, oh, you're supposed to live and through this. I'm going to help work with them at wherever level they're at. So do I think that some people who commit suicide have gotten themselves into a place where they see no hope, and they're seeing debilitating chronic pain down the road, and they don't want to deal with that? I'm not going to judge them. I'm going to work with them. But a lot of people, and what I'm hearing from Angie's comment is she goes to that for, as a default. And Angie, you got to get into that. You got to stop and say to yourself, look, remember the it's okay pill. Remember, since day one, I've been talking about pushing the it's okay pill. What's the it's okay pill? Angie's saying to herself, it's okay how I feel. It's okay that I'm like this. It's okay that I tend to think in terms of extremes. But what's the middle ground here? What's the middle ground? What can I do in the moment? She's saying, every time something happens and I'm upset by it, my first thought goes to suicide. So that alone tells me that you don't know how to manage being upset. There's something about being upset that causes you to think in terms of all or nothing. And that is something you need to get into, sister. You got to get into it like you have a toothache, or you have knee pain, or you have any other physical illness. You got to stop in the moment. Again, guys, if you're watching this on any of the platforms, please share this. Conversations about mental health need to be out in the open like this. There's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with talking about that you have suicidal thoughts. Most suicides can be prevented if people just say to themselves, it's okay that I'm feeling desperate. It's okay that I'm feeling hopeless. Let me get some help. But the problem is people sink to these lows and the hopelessness takes over and they feel like I'm never going to get better. Such a shame, because there's so many people out there who would be willing to help them. Suicidal thinking is pervasive. People think, Angie, you're not the only one who keeps in the back of their mind suicide as an option. Well, if that happens, I can always take myself out. Not realizing that what they're doing is they're setting themselves up for thinking in a more absolute way. So Angie, I'm going to get to some other questions and then come back to you, but you got to start working on managing when you're upset. I don't know where you learned or what you learned about being upset, sister, but you need to learn some new skills where being upset is okay. It's okay that I'm upset. Nothing wrong with me being upset. Let me work on it. Let me manage with it. I'm upset. There's no big deal that I'm upset. That would be my initial advice to you. But the main advice is you need to work on your relationship with yourself. Angie's relationship with herself has to be more supportive. Imagine if you said to a girlfriend of yours or a guy friend of yours, whatever, oh, you're upset? Go kill yourself. You should kill yourself because you're upset. Of course you wouldn't say that to them. Don't say it to yourself. You got to talk to yourself the way you would talk to somebody you care about. And Angie needs to start doing that. Okay. So I'll circle back to you in a sec, Angie. Let me just get to some more questions. Please, people, if you're watching this, you're here for a reason. There's some reason you're drawn to this. Ask a question. You'll feel a sense of relief. Trust me. Arindira, hi, Dr. Stephen. Today I made an appointment with a clinical psychologist for my son and me. Beautiful. And I talked to my ex-husband regarding him breaking his son's promise. I mentioned that he felt rejected. Outstanding, Arindira. Outstanding. So you're moving forward with the idea that there's nothing wrong with how you feel. You're meaning that you're working on these issues out in the open like you would any other issue that you have that's a physical illness. Beautiful. Would love to hear how it goes. Okay. So your follow-up is this. And Angie, I didn't see your follow-up, so I'll get to that in a sec. Sorry. Let's see here. Mentioned that he felt rejected and not important to him. I can't do this alone. It hurts me to see him cry. He felt sad and angry because his father keeps breaking promises. Boy, I'll tell you what, I have worked with so many adult children who that parental disappointment plagues them, man, plagues them. He felt sad and angry because his father keeps breaking promises. I can't get his father to understand how important he always says that he was emotional and physically abused and that it did not affect him. I told him, if that is true, then ask your son, what kind of father are you? Wow. Good stuff. Good stuff, Arindira. You know what, Arindira? If you're still on, you may never get through your husband. That's probably why he's your ex-husband. You probably learned early on that you can't get to him. You can't make him feel. He's got that narcissistic flair to him, meaning that, remember, everyone has narcissistic qualities. Everyone has depressive qualities. Everyone has every mental illness quality to a certain degree. But the thing that makes a narcissist is what you're writing, sister, lack of empathy. He doesn't seem like he has a lot of empathy. He doesn't seem like he has a lot of empathy for his son, which is just blows me away, because how you cannot have empathy for your kid is just unbelievable. So it's good that you are taking your son under your wing, so to speak, and getting him to talk more about his mental illness, whatever's going on with him. You got to do that. Don't make it a one and done kind of thing. Okay, you've got to deal with this. You got to help your son continue to deal with this so that he can heal. He's got to be able to heal from this. And the only way he's going to be able to heal from this is by you working with him on it. Okay, so great. I would love to hear how it goes and how you're doing. So let me know how the conversation with the psychologist went. I'm assuming that, he's licensed or she's licensed, and they're not going to have any issue with you, talking about this in any other way that needs to be talked about. Okay. So let's get on to another question here. Don't know if we're having a technical issue where all of a sudden we lost all our viewers, but I'm just going to keep going anyhow. So let me get back to Angie's. So she's saying, oh yes, yelling, arguing, raised voices, crying are all huge triggers for me. I don't even know where to start with that either. It's worse if it's from someone I see as an authority figure. So that right there tells me that, there's some trauma there, Angie, that you went through. You saw a lot of domestic violence, or you saw a lot of people yelling at each other, and that caused you to be traumatized by that. So that's something that you need to work on. You need to remind yourself, and I've worked with a lot of PTSD people, And one of the things you work with people with post-traumatic stress disorder is, you don't do this just boom, because you need to work them therapeutically, work with them therapeutically, is to remind them, where are you? Are you in Baghdad, or are you in Baltimore? Where are you right now? You've got to ground yourself in where you are, because trauma will basically remind or will make us feel that we're right back where we were. So Angie is saying what I thought is that she learned early on that from authority figures to cower, to be afraid of the negativity, to be afraid of the arguing. So now when she argues, she gets traumatized, she wants to kill herself, and then she feels like there's no hope. Well, Angie, you got to work on that. You got to work on that. You got to find a way to talk out some of that trauma from the past that you had. Hey, Fernando, how's it going, man? I'll get to you in a sec. You gotta work on that trauma, because that's what trauma is. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but now I don't know how it is in all states, but in most states, if I go upstairs and start physically abusing my wife in front of my son, and then when the police come, that comes out, they can take my kid, because that's now a form of child abuse. Witnessing domestic violence is a form of child abuse now. Why? Because of people like Angie, because of what she saw growing up and the trauma it causes people. Okay. So Angie, yeah, you got to work on that trauma, because what you're talking about is a form of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder, by the way, is on one side of the spectrum. On the other side of the spectrum is post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth doesn't get a lot of airtime because, negativity sells. If it bleeds, it leads. Post-traumatic growth is the idea that people go through trauma and they grow from it, but they got to work on it. They got to work on it. Okay. So yes, Angie, you're on the right road. Your awareness is growing. Because like I use the example of racism a lot as conditioning. If I was conditioned to hate all black people or all white people, and I don't want to be like that, I wake up in my 50s and I'm like, what? I got to start realizing, wow, it's not that I'm a racist. I was taught to be a racist. And I maintain even a hardcore white nationalist or a black person who hates white people or whatever, Jew, Arab, whatever it may be, excuse me, anybody who's motivated to look at themselves and why they believe what they believe can absolutely make some changes. And we don't do enough of that. So again, the topic is how to constructively argue in your relationship. So for Angie, I would say, Angie, one of the things constructively you need to realize in an argument is how arguing affects you. You've got to realize that that's a trigger for you. Okay. Now that doesn't mean avoid all arguing. It means to be ready to be triggered. Okay. All right. So let me get to somebody else. I'll come back to you. Hey, Severina, how are you? Good to see you back. Let's see here. Who's next? Rose is saying, thanks, Rose. How do I maintain a constructive conversation with somebody who is constantly hostile, jaded, and bitter to the world? It's a good one. I believe in always being optimistic, because that changes that's the change I want to see in the world. Absolutely. Gandhi. Absolutely. Be the change you want to be. Michael Jackson, the man in the mirror. Absolutely. How do I maintain a constructive conversation with somebody who's constantly hostile, jaded, and bitter to the world? Rose, you try to remember that something is going on within them that is causing them to be hostile, jaded, and bitter. And you try, I don't know how close this person is to you. I don't know if it's a husband, wife, brother, sister, mother, father, but you've got to try to work on realizing also that their hostility, their jadedness, and their bitterness is not about you, meaning that it's not you. You're not the reason they're doing this. And I don't know if you guys have read the 4 Agreements and all, great. Not really. It's more self-help stuff, but there's a good part in there about not taking things personally. Difficult sometimes when it's coming at you, but Rose, at some point, if this person who is constantly hostile, jaded, and bitter to you is constantly hostile and jaded to you, you're going to have to make a decision about what place they have in your world. whether or not you want to be subjected to that negativity. I don't know the degree to which you're able to manage negativity, but constantly being around that level of negativity can be challenging, especially if that person's not aware that they're constantly hostile, jaded, and bitter. There are a lot of people that have zero, or not zero, but close to zero when it comes to self-awareness. So they don't even realize that they are the way they are. They don't even know they're being hostile, jaded, and bitter because that's who they are. So, I'm not one of these people that believes as a mental health person that you have to constantly be exposed to somebody who's abusing you, whether it's physically, mentally, or emotionally, because they are your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your husband, your wife. You can forgive somebody for being a certain way and not have much of a relationship with them if you are very empathetic and you feel a lot for them. So what I would recommend for you, Rose, at this point is you have to have a conversation with yourself and ask yourself, why do I stay in this relationship? Why do I constantly expose myself to this? Why do I constantly why do I constantly expose myself to someone who's hostile, jaded, and bitter? If that person is not willing to look at that and own how that's affecting you, again, remember, that's got the narcissistic flair, meaning they're unaware. They're unaware of how they're treating other people. They don't know. They don't have the ability to empathize and say, oh, whoa, why Rose is so nice and sweet. She's always trying to be optimistic. Why am I affecting her negatively? Or maybe, Rose, you haven't said to that person, your constant hostility, jadedness, and bitterness is having a real negative effect on me. And I'm wondering, can we do something about that? Okay. So again, conversations with yourself, talk to you, Rose. Why are you perpetuating this relationship? Okay. So Fernando, what's up, Fernando? What do you think about those who seek to make people suffer as retribution for negative acts? It's like they are sold to talking, or they are not sold to talking because it feels better to hurt people. They are not sold to talk. How can we promote talking as a better avenue? Excellent question, Fernando. Excellent question. What I would recommend for you is, if there's somebody in your life who is making you suffer as retribution for negative acts you've done to them, then you need to maybe talk to them about why they're doing that. You need to talk to them about what's going on. Why are you continuing to make me suffer for negative acts? Maybe they don't feel, if it's you, maybe they don't feel like you've owned it enough. Maybe they don't feel like you've apologized, or you have tended to their wound. So the only way that they can make you understand that is by getting vengeance. So if you're still on, Fernando, give me a follow-up. Is this you or somebody else? But yes, absolutely. We need to make conversation. That's why I said tonight's topic is how to constructively argue. One of the things that will break down any conversation is retribution, getting even. You didn't do it for me, so I'm not doing it to you. So Fernando's saying he's apologized. Okay. So then the question I would get to you on, Fernando, is what is going on there? Like, what is going on? What is it about them that has caused that you're, and again, I don't know if this is somebody close to you or not, but may talk to them. Why are you constantly trying to seek retribution for me? What do I need to do? What do I need to do to show you that I'm sorry? I mean, what should I do? Should I slip my wrist? Should I hit myself with a hammer? Talk to them, Fernando, about how it hurts you for them to constantly be hurting you. Okay. If they're not talking to you, that makes it more difficult. If the person isn't able to talk to you, then that makes, again, like I was telling Rose, at some point, people, I know loyalty is one thing and all that, but at some point, we've got to draw boundaries with people who we've tried to help. We've given chance after chance. I'm not saying, like I said before, just because they show some little negativity that you cut them out of your life, but we've got to at some point say, look, if you're going to continue to do this, if you're going to continue to apologize but hurt me, if you're going to continue to blame me for everything, and you're not willing to own your part in it, at some point, you got to ask yourself, how long am I staying in this relationship? Yes, they avoid, which I understand that they aren't ready to talk. Okay. So again, Fernando, I would ask you, what's going on with you, man? Like, why do you need them in your life? I'm not saying cut them out, but you've got to get into, like, what does it mean? Like I'm hearing a little bit of guilt, Fernando. I'm hearing like it's almost like you may feel that this is your penance, or that this is something that you know, I gotta take this beating because I gave it out. So I don't know if it sounds, I'm not thinking it's your wife. I could be wrong, but I'm getting a feeling that's like a secondary family member, like a brother or a sister or somebody like that, or a friend or something, but I could be wrong. Oh, because my wife suffers the most. Okay. Yeah, I bet she does. I bet she does suffer from whatever is being inflicted upon you. So again, Fernando, what I would recommend with you, man, is just have a straight up, like a conversation kind of similar to this. How long are you going to make me, it's her family. Okay. That's what I thought, a secondary family member. So it seems like that you maybe have did something or hurt somebody or and they won't forgive you. And, you know, I could have hundreds of talks on forgiveness, what it is, what it isn't, but you've got to maybe work on forgiving yourself, Fernando, and say, look, I paid my penance due here. And this is why we're talking about how to constructively argue in a relationship. You know, this is exactly what I'm talking about. What I'm guessing, Fernando, is whatever happened with this extended family member never was processed. It was never dealt with. And maybe it happened over and over. And then that built up more and more of this animosity. And now it's to the point where you're feeling that this person is constantly attacking you. So what I would recommend is this, Fernando, is try to come at them in a very subtle way. Meaning, look, we got to work this out. I mean, what's the plan here? I mean, are you still upset that I said this or did this or whatever? What's the plan? So your planning is just to make me pay the price for this and have have retribution on me for the rest of our life. And if they say, yeah, you're damn right, man, I'm never going to forgive you. Well, then, brother, you got to talk to your wife, tell her what's going on, and you guys make a decision about boundaries. You've got a Hispanic sounding name. So why I'm bringing that up is there's a cultural piece that probably is at work here. You know, a lot of families, you know, my wife's Asian. I was born, I'm not Puerto Rican, but I was born in Puerto Rico. So my grandfather married into a Puerto Rican family. So the family is everything. Familia. But you know, familia can be taken a little too far sometimes, in my opinion. Culture can be taken too far sometimes. I'm not saying abolish all culture, but the cultural pressure, the cultural conditioning that people deal with without questioning can really affect somebody. So what I would recommend is you and your wife, and like you said before, it's negatively, your wife suffers the most. You and your wife should talk about what the plan is. Yes, I'm Hispanic and and yes, family is important to them. Absolutely. So you guys should maybe call a family meeting and call this out. Call this out. I don't know what they're holding against you, bro, but you guys should talk about it. You guys, maybe you and your wife should say, look, if you all are going to treat me and treat my wife, my husband like this, then we're not going to have much of a relationship. And I don't mean that, but something to that effect. We need to work on this. Okay. So yes, if you're a proponent of communication, my brother, you need to go to that person in an empathetic way. Rosa, or whatever her name is, whatever person it is, what's going on? I mean, when are we gonna bury the, squash this? I mean, when is this just going to go on? Do you see how you're affecting your sister? I mean, bring your sister, bring your wife so that the sisters or brothers or whoever it is can talk this out. But you and your wife need to be the strong ally, meaning that people need to understand that, yes, I used to be direct, but not as empathetic as I should be. Okay, great that you can admit that. We need to be more empathetic, bro. Maybe that's the missing piece. Maybe they don't see you as empathetic. Maybe they don't see you as understanding how you hurt them. And dude, I'm a guy too. Obviously, I think I am. But anyway, ask my wife. But what do we learn from our dads, man? I got no apologies to make. And empathy, come on. I make the money. What else do I need to do? So you need to work on your empathy, bro. Your empathy skills. Excuse me. So maybe go to that person, write them a letter, show them that you're trying to feel for how you hurt them, and maybe they'll respond to that. And if they don't, and they continue with the negativity, like I was telling Rose before, sometimes you got to create boundaries, guys. I mean, sometimes you do. Especially if you have a family or you're surrounded by people that it's just constant negativity most of your life. And then they expect you to be, then they're getting older and now they want to have a relationship with you and nobody's owning what they've done. And they want you to just, can't we just bygones be bygones? So easy to say that when you're not the one abusing them. They're abusing you. Anyway, so Fernando's saying, I have an angry thought. This is it. Yes, however, excuse worse behavior. So I don't feel like auditioning. I feel you. The excuse is worse. Yeah, I hear you, man. But again, if you want, do it for your wife. If you want to improve your relationship with your wife, then you've got to get connected with each other and get a perfect alliance going where the family understands that if they're going to have a relationship with you guys, they got to deal with these issues. Call a family meeting. Bro, you and your wife call a family meeting and call this out. Hear what they, and if they have some stuff they need to say to you, then you got to sit through it. But when they're doing it, empathize. Oh yeah, I hear you. That must have. I know, man. I'm sorry that I hurt you, and see what can come out of that. Okay, so I hope that helps. Aaron Deere is following up. Another angry thought is I didn't marry her family. I married her. Well, bro. Again, I empathize with you because I feel you. I do. I mean, a lot of times you want to just have a relationship with your wife and not have all this crap. It sounds like you're not either that close or you don't come from a big family. So her family has taken you on. But again, remember, man, if you're saying that to your wife, that's not going to get you brownie points with her either. But I feel you. Give it to me straight. I can take it, sir. Okay, I'll give it to you straight, bro. You married her family. I mean, if your wife wants you to marry her family and you don't want to marry her family, that's going to be a problem with you guys because she's going to feel like you don't empathize with her. You don't empathize with how this is affecting her. So yeah, man, you may have to kind of, I don't want to say man up because that's sexist, but you gotta go and say, okay, but so this is my, and I gotta, good. I'm glad you think it's interesting. This is kind of, and I gotta move on and close out, but I appreciate you exchanging with me because this is exactly why I'm doing this, Fernando. I'm not doing this just to be here talking and, all of that. So, you and your wife need to sit down and figure out what the strategy is first. You got to find out so honey, you're saying that there's no wiggle room here. Like you're saying that I married your family too, but they get to just treat me any way they want. And maybe you don't feel your wife has been that loyal to you. I don't know. Maybe you don't meaning loyal in the sense that maybe you feel she sides with them against you. You guys need to talk about that, dude. Because I know from the previous show, your wife was talking about some postpartum stuff. And so you guys have your own pressures too. So my Yeah, Veronica's watching too. Great. You guys are great. Please share this if you're watching this. But yeah, you guys need to sit down, and I'm going to send you a bill. By the way, I charge $1,000 an hour. No, I'm kidding. But you guys need to sit down and get a strategy going here. Okay, you guys need to sit down, and maybe Fernando feels you haven't had his back with your family. You need to hear why he's feeling that, because if he's feeling you don't have his back, then he's going to feel like, why should I have your back or your family's back? Okay, so you guys need to sit down. I'm glad you guys are doing this together, but you need to sit down and talk this out, because I'm not saying Fernando's doing tit for tat, but what happens is it just seems like I've just noticed this in the 20 plus years I've been doing this, that it's almost like a subconscious thing. We give what we get. And then sometimes it's not even conscious that we're doing it. Oh yeah, I'm going to do it. But that just seems like a kind of a psychological law in our heads. Okay. Okay, great. Yes, I think that's exactly it. Thanks, Doc. No problem. Okay, guys. So let me know how it goes. Talk it out. Get a strategy going. The family, and then you go to the family with a plan on how we're going to heal these wounds. And yeah, Fernando, remember, Fernando, before we go, empathy is not agreeing with them. Empathy is trying to understand where they're coming from, where you're just, oh, okay. So yeah. So when I said you were a fat, whatever, excuse that. I'm just using that as something people say to each other. But when I insulted you, that hurt your feelings. I can see, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. You're right. You're right. Remember, Fernando, don't finger point, bro. Don't, well, you did it, because it's just going to be back and forth. All right. So I hope that helped. I want to finish up here with Arundira's last comment. I think he has a wound or wounds already. I know that affects later in life. And yes, Dr. Stephen, great. She's licensed in California. Beautiful. So, and again, that's good for Fernando and Veronica. Maybe you guys need to find somebody in my field and talk some of this stuff out. Maybe some of Veronica's postpartum is relationship issues. Maybe there's something going on where Veronica's not feeling too empathize by you. Okay. So let me know how it goes. Please tune in again. Okay. We got another, I was just about to sign off, but Adam's here from YouTube. Being in a competitive field, I'm constantly affected by stress and anxiety. Sometimes it makes me panic. It makes me have a panic attack, which I can't even control. How do I reduce the stress and anxiety? All right, my brother, Adam. So straight up, sounds like you got a fear of failure, dude. Sounds like you got perfectionistic traits. As I'm saying, you're new to this, Adam. So as I launch this out, if I'm on base, tell me yes. If I'm not, tell me no. But fear, anxiety, stress, and anxiety from competition, generally speaking, is centered around some trauma you had as a kid, where you learned that Adam had to be perfect. Or if Adam fails, that's the end of the world. Or maybe you're telling yourself something now that if I fail at this competitive field I'm in, then that's going to mean I'm a total failure. There's something around failure that is causing you to have anxiety, bro. And again, I don't know you, obviously, but it sounds like if you're having stress and anxiety and it's based on competition, the competition, winning, being competitive, can also be a sign, not always, can also be a sign of insecurity, meaning that you are trying to prove something to yourself. Okay, Severina, take it easy. Have a good night. Didn't get any questions from you, but hope you have a good weekend. No problem. You're welcome. Thanks for tuning in. So Adam, you've got to get into the belief system about winning, about competition, what that means to you. You got to start thinking about your thinking, brother. That's called metacognition. Why am I so anxious about this? Performance anxiety is not only a sexual term. Athletes struggle. A lot of athletes struggle with performance anxiety. I've worked with many athletes, okay? Many former athletes, many athletes who are dealing with the loss of identity of being pro athletes. So, but in your case, it sounds like the stress and anxiety and a panic attack is coming from, oh God, if I mess up here, if I don't do well, then that, and your belief system is getting you too far ahead of yourself. So if I was working with you, we would spend some time figuring out what your belief system is about failure. I don't know if you've caught any of the other webcasts I do, but there's a thing in cognitive behavioral psychology about the ABCs of thinking: activating event, belief, consequence. How that works is something activates us, we impose a belief upon it, and those beliefs have consequences in the form of feelings. You need to get into, bro, what do you believe about performance? Great, Clara. Thanks for tuning in. Good night. Have a good weekend. You need to get into, Adam, what is there any way of astrology, psychology, healing forum topic we can discuss? Sure, bring it up. I am not a believer, Rose, that everything's about psychology, and there are many different forces that are at work. We don't even know a lot of, but anyway, yeah, bring up whatever you want. So back to Adam. Adam, I don't know if you're still on, but you've got to work on when you say how to reduce the stress and anxiety, bro, it's not about reducing the stress. I mean, it is partly obviously about reducing the stress and anxiety, but you got to figure out first why I'm stressed and anxious. Why? Behavioral psychology has sort of petered out because people understand, like with cancer research, sure, you can go to chemo and all of this and treat the symptoms of cancer, but God hope that there are people who are trying to figure out why we get cancer. And that's what I try to help people do. Figure out why you are so stressed and anxious about performance. I guarantee you, bro, that if you spend a little time looking at that, you'll get some answers. Okay? So I hope that helped, Adam. You didn't follow up with anything, so I don't know if you're still on. Maybe you're catching this a later time and you can post a question on YouTube. So again, just to close out, how to constructively argue in a relationship. Please, people, if you get into an argument with somebody you care about, once the dust settles, go back and process the argument. Don't worry about stirring it up again. Tell them, look, I don't want to stir it up again, but we've got to process the argument. Okay, Adam's chiming back in. Yes, basically fear of failure paralyzes me. Okay, exactly. I always believe if I fail, it will affect my existence in my field. There you go, bro. There you go. You're the hitter up at bat, facing down that fastball thinking, oh crap. If I strike out here, I'm going to lose my contract. The coach is going to cut me. My wife's going to leave me. All these fans are going to boo me. You're too far ahead, brother. You got to start focusing on the present. You got to be more present minded. But before you do that, you got to get into where this fear of failure paralyzes you, dude. And again, man, I'm thinking it's dad or mom or something happened to you as a little kid, man, where pressure was put on you. I don't know if you were parentified. Parentified is when a kid is put in a role of parent too soon and they take on all this pressure to perform. And if they fail, then they're it's your fault if something happens to your brother. I don't know if that's you, but you got to get into, man, tonight, spend some time. Well, what is up with this fear of failure I have? I mean, I got to deal with that. I got to feel that. Where is that coming from? And the more you do that, the more you're aware that it's being driven by conditioning. Think of it like this, Adam. If you're a racist and you don't want to be a racist anymore, you got to start thinking, well, what's up with that? I mean, where did I learn that all black people, all white people suck? But the more you think like that, the more you start getting into, so it's not that I'm a racist. I learned to be a racist. So for you, Adam, I'll close out on this. It's not that you're a person with a fear of failure who has panic attacks. You learn that. And I don't know if you caught some of my previous broadcasts, bro, but you've got to make it okay that you have this. I call it the it's okay pill. Adam needs to say to himself, it's okay that I have this issue. It's okay that I have this fear of failure. Because, dude, I'm guessing you hate that you have this. You hate that you're like this. And dude, I'm telling you, man, the more you hate that you're like this, the more you're going to get stuck in this. None of this is a quick fix, brother. I'm just giving you some ideas of what working with somebody like me is. I'm not saying work with me. I'm saying somebody like me in the field will help you deepen into the whys. Why am I like this? And I've said this before. If we had a culture, a society where people were working on their issues, where people were stopping in the moment and going, why am I like, why do I think like this? Why am I a white supremacist? Do I believe all white people suck? Why am I strapping this bomb onto myself to blow up these Israelis or to blow up these Palestinians? Where in the Quran does it say kill your enemy? Never, nowhere. Nowhere in the Quran does it say anything about kill. Anyway, the point is, if people were questioning their belief system, we'd have a totally different planet, okay? So Adam, I'm going to prescribe a pill for you, brother. It's called the It's Okay pill. Adam needs to say to himself, it's okay that I'm like this. It's okay. I accept that I'm like this, but I got to work on it. Because whatever fear of failure you have, bro, is conditioning. Somewhere along the way, it got drilled into you that if Adam fails, if Adam doesn't perform, his existence, not only in the field, but his existence is shaky. And you got to get into why you feel like that, okay? Anyway, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Please share this. Please tell people about this. Remember, I am on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. Mountain. I'm going to keep doing this as long as people are tuning in and asking questions. So I've got some guests lined up for next week. I have another psychologist coming on. We're going to talk about social media and how that affects people's psyche. That's going to be very interesting. You can ask both of us questions online. I mean, like obviously in this format. So everyone have a good weekend. Thanks for logging on. Rose, cool. Yeah, I don't know what those pills are, but have a great weekend. And please share this and tell people about this. We need to normalize conversations about mental illness. Remember, everyone has a degree of mental illness, myself included. Why do I say that? Everybody has a degree of physical illness, but we're not ashamed a lot of times of our physical illness. You got to work on your degree of mental illness. Okay, people? All right. Have a great weekend. See you on Monday.